Hello, my name is Precious Miller and I am a student success coach in the College of Education and Human Development at Western Michigan University. And today I have the pleasure of sharing some information with you regarding learning strategies. And the specific learning strategy I'm going to be sharing with you today is called metacognition. Now, if you haven't heard of that term before, metacognition is a fancy way of saying learning how to learn and implementing specific learning strategies that have been proven to support students in seeing an increase in their grade by at least one full letter grade. Before we jump into our workshop today, I want this to be as interactive as possible. So I'm going to start you off with pausing the video and participating in a journaling opportunity. So the things that I want you to journal are what you are currently doing, what you're currently practicing to see an increase in your grades. So what are your current learning strategies? What are your current study habits? So take a moment and journal those down. Okay, so now that you have journaled down and identified what you're currently doing, I want you to take those strategies and not lose them. It's important for us to know exactly what we're currently doing so that we know how we can add or improve on the tools that we already have. Because I know that you already have some tools that are working for you today, and I don't want to change those. But what I do want to do is add to your toolkit additional strategies that you can use to see that change in your grade. So as you are thinking about the grades that you have and the practices that you are currently implementing, I want you to sit and think about whether or not you are seeing the grade that you want to see based on the strategies that you are using. Now, 9 times out of 10, if you're watching this, the answer is that there's some room for improvement. And that's okay. Improvement is a great place to start. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the objectives for our workshop today. And that is assess your current learning strategies, implement specific learning strategies to see a change in the grade that you would like to see, understand Bloom's taxonomy in relationship to lecture comprehension, and then we're going to end with generating self-affirming statements that we can begin to say over ourselves and over our learning to promote motivation and focus. So those self-affirming statements are going to help us become more motivated, and stay focused. Keep our eye on the prize here. Okay, so let's get started. So we talked about metacognition, which is learning how to learn. Metacognition, if we have to put a picture to it, it's almost like having this brain outside of our own that's helping us think, right? So this outside brain is saying, hey, Precious, are you really listening? Are you really involved? Are you really reading what you're reading right now? That outside brain is monitoring what we should be doing in that moment. And as that outside brain is monitoring what we're doing, we want to make sure that we are responding. So if my answer is no, I'm not really reading, or no, I'm not really focused, that's an indication for me that I need to recenter myself and find a way to pay attention and do what it is that I need to do so that I'm truly learning this information, whether that's in a lecture or if I'm in my private study time. And the importance of this is because we want to make sure that we are increasing our level of learning, and that's called Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is in a pyramid shape, and at the bottom of that pyramid we have the remembering stage, and that's when we know and understand the definitions of a concept that we're learning. Moving up that hierarchy, though, understanding is the second tier of that pyramid, and understanding is whether or not I can break down that information to my 8-year-old nephew or my 80-year-old grandmother. Me being able to teach the information in my own words tells me that I am understanding the information. But we don't want to stop there. We want to continue to go up that pyramid, that hierarchy of learning. So the next stage is apply. And that is when I am able to solve a problem that I've never seen before. And that's the place where we want to be when we are preparing for a test, such as a multiple choice test. And so a lot of those questions are questions we have never seen before. But if I am at apply in the hierarchy of learning, it doesn't matter if I've never seen it before, because I know the information myself and I can put together the concepts that I know to answer that question. I'm a problem solver at that stage. But we don't want to stop there. So going up that hierarchy. Next is analyze. And analyze is me being able to break down the information into a mini lecture. Next we have evaluate. And that's when I can come up with my own ideas. So I could look at the information and evaluate whether or not I agree or disagree. Is this true? Is this factual? I begin to question. And then at the very top of the hierarchy of learning, at the top of Bloom's taxonomy, we have create, which is where problems are solved. That's when I can take two different theories or two different ideas, put them together, and make something that might not have existed before. And learning is so exciting that way, right? Get excited about the learning that you're doing. So next we're going to review the study cycle, which is when I've worked with students in the past, they say that this is the best bang for their buck. So with the study cycle, the first thing that you want to do is a preview. So before you attend class, you want to preview the information that the professor's going to go over. So that's looking at the lecture slides, looking at notes that the professor might send you ahead of time, or it's previewing the section or the book that you're reading that the lecture is going to mimic or mirror. And remember, it's a preview, so you're not reading the chapter in its entirety. You're just familiarizing yourself with that information. And the reason why that is helpful is because the research shows that when we give our brains the big picture, right, we see it all, and then we add in those bite-sized chunks, it's easier for us to remember that information. It's almost like doing a preview is giving yourself a skeleton, and then attending class, which is the next part, is adding the meat to that skeleton. So the first part of the study cycle is doing that preview. The next step is attend class, and attend class 100% of the time. And I know all of you are attending class 100% of the time. So as you are attending class 100% of the time, you are ensuring that you are present. You are present mentally, emotionally, physically, in that lecture space, in that learning environment. And as you are attending class, you are constantly asking yourself, can I teach this information? Am I truly present as I'm learning this information? And you want to be active in that lecture. So that's writing down questions, identifying those aha moments. So when the professor is sharing some information that reminds you of something that happened when you were 8, or something that your family or friend or a loved one is currently experiencing, that's an aha moment. If it reminds you of a movie, write down those, because that's a connection to the content. That's a connection to the information. And the more connections you can make to the information, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to recall it. So after you attend class and you're writing down all of those notes, after class, you're going to do something called a review. And the review is where you cement that information. It's where you move the information that you just obtained from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. You're cementing it. You're saying, nope, information, you are going to stay this time. So the sooner you can do a review, the better. But if you have a time constraint or something else going on, it's okay for you to move on about your day. But at the end of your day, before you go to bed, make sure that you pull out the notes that you took and you're reviewing what you wrote down, reviewing those aha moments, reviewing that information that you obtained in lecture. It's almost like when you see a movie, like your favorite movie. Think about your favorite movie for a minute. You watch it for the first time and there's all this action and drama and, this awesome storyline. But then you watch it again and you notice that there is information in that movie that you didn't catch the first time. The same thing happens when we do our review. There's information that your brain catches the second time that it might have not seen that first time. And it again ensures that you move that information from your short-term memory to your long-term memory, so it's easy for you to recall at a later time. After you review, you want to make sure that you are studying. And that brings us to the intent study session, or the power hour. So as you are doing the power hour or the intent study session, we want to make sure that that time is also structured. And you want to give yourself about an hour to complete this entire study session model. So before you begin, you set a goal. And sometime that goal could be finish class flashcards for chapter 9 or actually read chapter 13 today. After you set a goal, you want to study with focus for about 30 to 50 minutes. And you're going to remove distractions, put away the cell phone or put it on silent. You want to make sure that you are in a comfortable space that is conducive to learning. And give yourself 30 to 50 minutes to do what it is that you need to do to accomplish the goal that you set. After you study with focus for about 30 to 50 minutes, you give yourself a break. And I think of this as like a sponge. Our brains are like a sponge. So there's only so much water that a sponge can take in. At some point, you have to squeeze the sponge and let the water out so that it can absorb more water or more liquid. When you take a break, you are squeezing your brain out, or you're letting your brain relax so that it can process that information and then be able to take in more, just like a sponge. So after you take a break or reward yourself for studying with focus, you go back and you do a review. You're reviewing the notes that you took, you're reviewing the chapter that you read, and then if you have time, you start another cycle of that power hour, that intense study session. And as you are going throughout the study cycle, you want to constantly ask yourself, am I learning this information? Can I teach this information? And the reason why I continue to repeat the step of teaching the information is because metacognition is almost like a mind shift, right? So when you are learning something, when some students come to college, the first thing that they think when they're charged with their syllabus is, if I study, then I'll get an A, and if I get an A, I get a degree. And I am not saying that is a bad thing, but metacognition shifts our perspective and says, if I study to teach the information, then an A is a natural byproduct because I can teach it. And a degree is going to come, but not only am I going to have a degree, I'm going to have content to back up that degree. So you want to make sure that you are positioning yourself to be able to teach the information that you're learning, because that again ensures that you know it. Have you ever sat down and tried to share someone a story or teach them something, and you fumble through it and you realize, oh, well, I didn't know that story like I thought I did? That is a signal that there's some more content that you need to learn. And that's a learning environment that is okay to make those mistakes. The environment that it's not so okay to make those mistakes in is on an exam. So when you teach it, you ensure that you know that information. So if you have a fish or a dog or a friend or an imaginary friend, put yourself in the situation to teach it out loud to see where the gaps are within your learning. So if you find that you are sharing some information and you're stumbling, write that content down, because that's a sign that it hasn't fully cemented in your brain yet. So it's a focus area. And that's the perfect environment to find out that there's a focus area that you need to spend some more time on. So again, make sure you are constantly assessing your learning, and that's the study cycle. Some other strategies that you can try is problem solving. So when you look at your book, because I know all of you have your book, look at your book and identify the parts in the chapter that have example problems, and then try to solve those example problems on your own. So you're not going to look at the back of the book. I know, take a deep breath, don't look at the answer. You want to give yourself about 20-25 minutes to answer that problem independently. And that's an opportunity for you to support your brain in solving that problem on your own. Because on that exam, you're going to be responsible for solving it on your own. So in your study time, you want to practice that. So give yourself 20 to 25 minutes to answer the problems independently. If you're unable to answer that problem independently, go to the back of the book and allow for the back of the book to give you some help in solving that problem. Just identify that you didn't do that problem independently, and then proceed on to the next question. And then during your next study time, you can go back to that example and try to solve it independently again. Another strategy is spending additional time on challenging material. So if after you've done the study cycle, you've done the review, and you've realized that some of that content is dense and is going to require for you to truly spend some time on it, then you want to make sure that you are reviewing that challenging content as often as possible. So put it on flashcards or take some notes and take a picture of it, and then review that picture on your phone when you're sitting in a waiting room or walking to class. But you want to keep that information at the forefront of your mind so that you don't forget it. You want to keep that information in your long-term memory, cement it to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. Another strategy is to aim for 100% mastery, not 90%. Have you ever done your studying and you're like, oh, I don't need to read that chapter, that's not going to be on the exam, but then it's on the exam? That's when you aim for 90% mastery. But the strategy here is to aim for 100% mastery. Another reading strategy that you can try is called chunking or clustering. And this strategy supports you in being present as you are doing your reading in the book. And so the strategy is you read the paragraph, right? You're reading it, you're present. I understand that. You stop at the end of that paragraph and ask yourself, did I understand what I just read? If the answer is yes, then you proceed on to the next paragraph. After that second paragraph, you stop and then you ask yourself, how do these two paragraphs relate to one another? Or did I understand what I just read in relationship to the first paragraph? If the answer is yes, you continue on until you complete the chapter. Now, some students want to share this strategy. They're like, that is going to take forever. But if you realize it or think about it, when you're doing your reading, sometimes your eyes might be reading the words, but your brain's thinking about groceries or thinking about the next thing on your to-do list. You're not reading anyway. This strategy supports you being present and truly reading the information as you are reading it. So you're not going back to reread it a second time because you read it and was present and learned it the first time around. So that's a reading strategy you can try. Another strategy you can try is called a chapter map. And that is when you outline the chapter. So you will write down the chapter title, then you'll write down the headings in that chapter, followed by the subheadings of that chapter. And you're just writing down the words, the chapter, the heading, the subheadings. And as you are doing your review, you can use the chapter map as a way to teach someone and use that chapter map as an outline. Or you can quiz yourself and ask, how does this subheading relate to the chapter? Or how do these subheadings relate to one another? It's a way for you to create this master web of information as a way to assess your learning, test your learning, or review what you should be learning. Another concept you can try is called a compare and contrast map. And that is when you literally write down two concepts that seem really similar to you, but then at the bottom you outline exactly what makes them different. I don't know what it is about writing some of that information down, but it is a visual reminder of why information is different and why two concepts that seem similar are different and why those two concepts might be used in different ways. So those are some strategies you can try. Next thing we're going to talk about is time management, and I know that's your favorite subject. So regarding time management, you want to make sure that you are setting time aside to study. So if you don't have a planner, my encouragement is that you get one or you create one, or you can download our Week at a Glance schedule on our resources page. The metacognitive strategy for time management is that you outline exactly where all of your time is going. So on that Week at a Glance schedule, you're going to account for all of your time. If there is time that is free and doesn't have a specific task associated with it, you're going to outline that free time and call it an appointment, because you want to make sure you have an account for all of your time. One way you can look at time is like money. So if you have a pot of money and you don't designate where that money should go, at the end of the month you might find that your money is gone, but you don't exactly know where it went. Our time can also do the same thing. So if we don't designate our time to do something, the time is just going to come and it's going to go, and we're not going to have an account for it. But when you identify exactly what you're supposed to be doing in a weekly schedule or a planner, it's going to ensure that you are dedicating time to your studies, that you'll actually study, and that you will be more efficient with your time. So make sure that if you don't have a way that you are currently managing your time, that you sit down and you actually develop one. As you are scheduling your time, one thing that you could do is have a weekly meeting with yourself. And that could be on a Monday night or a Sunday morning. And you are outlining your to-dos for the week and what you're going to do to make sure that your goals for the week are being met. Another metacognitive strategy in relationship to time management is when you receive an assignment, you begin doing it the day that it's assigned. So if you know you have an exam in 3 weeks, you start planning for that exam today. And the way that you prepare for that exam is by reading the chapter, is by going to a tutor if that's something that you need. But you are doing incremental activities to support the goal that you have, which in this scenario is receiving an A on my exam in 3 weeks. All right, so our last section is about positive self-talk. And the significance in positive self-talk is when we verbalize things or when we say things or when we see things, sometimes we can have the tendency to mirror what we say or what we see. For example, I was preparing for a really big exam a couple months ago. And one thing that I did was I outlined positive things that I would say to myself prior to my studying sessions. I also wrote down the grade that I wanted to see on my exam, which was 95%. So every time I did homework, I wrote 95%. Every time I was reading a chapter, I wrote 95%. And guess what? On my exam, I got an 85%. Not exactly 95, but I got 85. And for me, that was a really big deal. So write down what it is that you would like to see. I don't know if you've ever heard or done the science experiment that involved 2 plants. So you take 2 plants, both plants are identical. One plant you say all positive things to, and the other plant you say all negative things to. But the treatment of the plant is the same. So each plant gets the same amount of sunlight, an amount of soil, an amount of water. But the only differences are the positive and negative words that are spoken over that plant. Every single time this experiment has been done, the plant that received the negative words dies. And that's a plant. How much more significant are the words that we say over ourselves? So, if you have a sheet of paper, I want you to pause the video right now, and I want you to write down 3 positive statements that you can begin to say over yourself. Some examples are, I can learn this material. I have what it takes. I can do this. But you want to write down positive statements that you can begin to say to yourself before an exam or before studying. So take a moment and write those down. All right, so I hope that you have found that writing down those positive, affirming statements are helpful for you, motivating for you, and will help you be focused and keep your eyes on the prize as you are implementing new learning strategies. Speaking of implementing new learning strategies, I also want you to identify one specific strategy that you're going to test out and try and commit to doing within the next week. And you want to make sure you commit to doing it within the next week, because if you don't commit, the chances of you doing it begin to minimize. So think about one strategy that was shared with you today, one strategy that you want to commit to doing, and then do it. And share it with me. I want to know how this video or these strategies have been helpful for you. As a measure of accountability, there are a list of resources that you can download. One resource that you can download is a specific model for note-taking that supports metacognition. It outlines how to follow the study cycle in relationship to note-taking. And I would love to hear from you. I want you to know that you can learn this material. I want you to know that you can do this. I want you to know that you can master every chapter, all of the content that you're learning. And I want you to know that you can make a large impact in this world and in the lives of others. I believe in you, metacognition works, and I would love to hear from you. I hope this was helpful. Again, my name is Precious Miller. I am a student success coach in the College of Education and Human Development at Western Michigan University. Have a good one.